Oh, the world sure feels noisy and a little unmoored. Same power structures and playbooks, different decade, but same outcomes. What? We need to change the game. But Women Advancing isn't about fixing women. We're busy reorienting leadership for the world we're living in and the one ahead. I'm your host, Kate Byrne. Each week, I talk with the women shaping what's next. Join us as we reset the compass on Women Advancing. Hey everyone, it's your host, Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. I love today's topic, the future of work. Because let's face it, we all know the existing system is broken. Guess what? Future one is going to be broken too if we keep trying to fix it with the wrong tools. In the words of Einstein, that would be insane. That's why we're so fortunate to be joined by one of the leading voices in this space, Jena McGregor, who's the managing editor of Charter, one of the up-and-coming leading, I'm going to say preeminent platforms and voices for the conversation of future work, what it's actually asking of us, and what we're still refusing to name. Jena sits at such a cool spot, this intersection of journalism, leadership, and systems thinking, and she holds such a clear-eyed view into how work is being redesigned and where it's quietly collapsing. And that's a good thing because that's called evolution. We're going to take a look at about childcare, less of a perk, more of a keystone to actually the infrastructure of the economy overall, why flexibility without care is just such a hollow promise, and why, frankly, the current metrics we cling to tell us so very little about whether work is actually working. And if you like what you hear, I know that Charter is actually having some upcoming online events on February 10th and February 24th. So more on those in the links that I include. So stay to the end, KB takeaways, and I thank you, as always, for continuing to listen in and support. Let me know what you think, and let's see what you learn about the future of work and what you can both do about it and where you can find your voice and help change it. Let's listen. Women Advancing listeners, welcome, welcome. And please join me in welcoming one of a voice in journalism that I have respected, I'm just going to say, for a long time. And she's building out to become one of, I think, a really thoughtful, provocative voice in the future of work. And that would be Jena McGregor, managing editor of Charter. Welcome, Jena.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate. It's great to see you and to be with everyone here.
You too. And Jena has been covering this for quite a while, this subject of the future of work. How do we redefine power? What advancement even really looks like? All of these things. So I feel fortunate to be able to have this conversation with Jena at such a critical time right now, with sands shifting everywhere around the world, around the globe, nationally, especially in this place that we call work. And I want to ask first, before we go into what you're seeing and all of that and the trend spotting and all of these things, because I often say history repeats itself. How did you first even get into this whole realm, like this beat?
It's a great question. I sometimes ask myself the same thing.
That seemed like a good idea.
I would say both happenstance, luck, and over time, a real, just genuine interest in trying to both write about and improve the way that we all spend so much of our days, so much of our time, right? I was fortunate to kind of luck into an internship early in my career that dropped me into business journalism. I knew I wanted to write, to edit, to work in New York magazines when that was still a thing, and it sort of dropped me into business journalism, got my feet wet in really learning a lot about all the basics that were great, and then had a couple of career moves that got me writing about the workplace, about leadership, about corporate governance, about how companies are managed. One of those being with someone that you know quite well, John Byrne.
True, true. True, true.
True, true. So I worked at Fast Company where I wrote a lot about these issues. I wrote it. I worked at Business Week where I was and that's where you and I first met at Fast Company.
Yeah,
Before I jumped
exactly.
past that, yeah. So Kate, you and I worked together there. I went to Business Week where I was the management editor and wrote about many of these issues there. Had a baby, took a little bit of time off, and then landed in what I thought would be a short-term gig and ended up staying, gosh, 10 years, I think. With the Washington Post, where I really wrote. I started as kind of a blogger writing about leadership in the headlines and just kind of riffing on whatever was the topic of the day. But it sort of transformed into a beat where I really got to focus on how business leaders in Washington were intersecting. And while I was there, later in the period was the first Trump administration, when there was so much reaction and response from corporate America. Wow, have times changed? And we also wrote, that was also when the pandemic began. And I spent a good bit of time, writing about the early days of how companies were responding to the pandemic. From there, I went to, and I'm just telling you my whole story here, Kate, but from there, I went to Forbes, where I really lucked into the opportunity, worked with a former colleague, Diane Brady, who's now at Fortune, who's amazing. And I had the opportunity there to really focus in on entrepreneurs and companies that are focused on the future of work, to continue writing about all these issues about, how we're dealing with hybrid work and return to office. And that was like almost synonymous with future of work there for a while, the early days of generative AI's launch, and stayed there for a few years. While I was there, I had the opportunity to launch a summit, like a live journalism summit focused on the future of work, which got me really interested in the opportunities for event-based journalism and the conversations and topics that we can discuss on stage. Short little pivot last year into a different kind of role, and then now at Charter, getting to combine kind of all of these things that I have loved, and that I've enjoyed writing about, as well as do live events too, which is just a perfect fit for me in so many ways.
I love that. One, I love that phrase, event-based journalism, because so often I think people, they don't understand that that, in fact, is a form of journalism.
And
And it's
I will credit Diane for this. She refers to them as live journalism events, and I completely agree. It is an opportunity to have important, powerful, sometimes difficult conversations on stage, and that they are journalism. It's just handled in a live event. Yeah.
exactly. So, one of the other things I hope everyone gathered from that and recognized is you are the penultimate, you're a wave surfer. You're on the crest just as something's kind of, you know what I mean, coming, and before it crashes down and becomes a really big thing. So that's such how exciting to be able to chronicle like the key wave moments of the past. Seriously, well, I won't assign a time frame, but since you started, right?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I'm not reminding how long I've been at this. I do think, and business works that way, right? I mean,
Right? Cyclical.
there's a
Yep.
thing that we're all gonna focus on for a while, and that's always the challenge, is to figure out how to dig deep and cover a story from every angle and make sure you are really addressing it in all the ways it needs to be covered, without the risk of, neglecting or not covering other issues that really matter and should get more attention.
Oh my God, so true. All right, so now we're gonna kinda dig into to now,
To
right?
now, okay,
Right?
let's
So
do
let's
it.
roll our sleeves up. So you have kind of an interesting vantage point because you kind of marry where theory meets like real life lived workplace reality. What patterns are you seeing right now that aren't getting enough attention in mainstream business media?
Yeah, 2 things come to mind, and one of them is getting enough, but I think it's starting to get enough, but I think it needs more. So, Charter's focus is to bridge research to practice. It is a future of work media and events company. We, have a newsletter with a subscriber base of 100,000, and our focus is really on is really on owners of the talent agenda. That's how we describe our
Oh, I
readership.
love that.
People who are really so it's yes, it's a lot of folks in HR and workplace roles, C-suite leaders, but really there's a takeaway for anyone who's managing people and who's leading teams. And so I don't think there's nearly enough focus being paid on the childcare crisis. We just saw this week both New York City and San Francisco come out with initiatives for free childcare. I mean, this is huge. This is absolutely huge. And
Massive.
it's so needed right now. There was a Brookings report this week that found we had negative net migration in 2025, which is going to severely impact lots of forms of labor, but childcare labor in particular. More than 400,000 women left the US workforce in the first half of 2025.
Oh my gosh, those numbers are stunning, and
Yeah.
not in a good way.
Yeah,
Jaw-dropping.
they're really concerning, and I think combined with the extent to which there was a Lean In report this year, the women in the workplace, the big study that they put out every year, that also had just some really and skipping ahead to something else I think you want to address, but, we're seeing the way DEI programs have been pulled back on or at least renamed in many organizations today because of the pressure to do so, in the broader landscape. And those numbers are startling. I mean, only, some of the numbers I just was shocked by. Only half of companies are prioritizing women's career advancement. There are 1 in 4 companies now offer fewer remote and hybrid work options. 1 in 6 cut back on formal sponsorship and discontinued or scaled back career development programs with content tailored for women. I mean, there's just a so you combine that childcare crisis issue with the way in which companies are pulling back on some of these programs that they've been doing for years to really, help women get ahead, to help, to in broader diversity issues. And so I think that is going to have a real impact. The other thing that I think is getting some coverage, but I think I have a personal interest in it, maybe because I have teens um, at home, is the impact that AI is going to have on entry level workers and
Mhm.
the kinds of job opportunities that the entry level workforce has and how much those are being impacted by AI. And I think for women, it creates yes, you've got the mothers of young children, you have the childcare crisis. We still are dealing with like the aging work, the aging parent issue for anyone in a sandwich generation. But now I think a lot of people at the peak of their careers are also going, I'm the parent of a teen or a college student or a young adult who can't get a job and there's no, and the path to success that I always imagined that they'd be able to take and have invested in so many ways, now it's not working anymore. And so I think like that little relief period that a lot of women feel in their careers, that's going away too. And also, I mean, obviously, this is not just a women's issue. This is an issue for
Everybody issue.
everyone. And it's an issue for pipelines and companies. It's an issue for how much people are able to get the early career experience that they need. It's an issue for how well companies will be able to build the pipeline of leadership talent that they need. So I think that should continue to get more coverage, and we should continue to look for smart and innovative solutions on that.
Absolutely. So, and that kind of leads me to another question I've got for you. It has to do with measurement,
Yeah.
right? And measuring this, measuring what we have been, right? Like output hours, all that kind of thing, optics from days gone by versus what actually matters. What do you think we should be measuring instead of, or what should we be looking to if we actually cared about sort of human sustainability and future of work?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think I'll tell you what I'm interested in is I feel like the answer you often hear to that is retention. Like, are you as a company retaining your people and holding on to them, right? And that's a sign instead of like how much work they're doing or how many hours they're putting in, that if you're retaining your people, you're doing something right. You've created a career path for them, they're happy. How do we measure retention at a time like right now when there's no jobs or there's far fewer jobs for people to go to.
Yeah.
And I mean, is it as effective of a yardstick right now?
Mhm.
There was a great story in the Washington Post by a former colleague of mine, Taylor Telford, recently, and it was about how much longer older workers are staying in the workforce and the impact that's having on the younger generation.
Yep.
Um, and so I'm very curious how the issue of retention is going to be looked at right now in the years to come as people just job hug as the buzzword is like, you just hang on to your job, with clenched fists to make
Yeah, yeah.
in the current environment. I'm very curious how that like kind of obvious statistic and measurement will be considered going forward. This is less something very easy to measure, but I love this phrase that I heard from, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I, over the years, had a number of interviews and conversations with Dean Carter, who used to be the CHRO of Patagonia.
Mm.
And I worked with him this past year when I took a little pivot out of journalism for a short period. And he's now the CEO of a small AI company. But he had this great phrase. He talked a lot about regenerative agriculture and how like what you put into the soil creates better plants, creates better and that this was a big idea at Patagonia. And so
Mhm.
he talked about this phrase of I want to think of the workplace as, are you as the employee getting more out of it than we're taking from you? Like, are you getting more out than we're extracting from you? And if you feel like you're learning more and succeeding more and advancing more than we're pulling from you, then I'm doing a good job. And I loved that concept.
I
Yeah.
love that concept
Yeah.
too. But for this, really what that is the workplace, yeah, becomes almost predatory, right? They suck you dry. It's not reciprocal at all. It's much
Yeah.
more it's becomes a place of pure obligation and drain.
Mhm.
And what that leads to is certainly not innovation, right? Certainly
Or
not trust.
creativity or growth or
Yes.
learning. Yeah.
Exactly. So that to me leads me to ask something a little bit about leadership in this kind of crazy time of flux. Although I got to say, I feel like for the rest of our lives, everything will be in flux, but
Mhm.
so it'll be a timeless conversation.
Yeah.
But, so everyone talks about leading through uncertainty.
Mhm.
From what you've seen and what Charter has chronicled in all your past coverage, what seems to really distinguish leaders who are genuinely adaptive from those who are just, performing confidence?
Yeah, I think this is like the question for leaders right now, right? I mean,
Yep.
you hit the nail on the head. This is exactly what people are grappling with. And it's a tough one. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to have an easy answer. I do. It's funny. We actually wrote about this week. And so I can pull a little bit from that, but like I just think people are looking around going, you know, I mean, there's this sense of paralysis of do I hire, do I not in the current environment? Many people are feeling fear and distraction and yes, uncertainty, the word that somebody used at one of our events. I'm tired of saying we live in unprecedented times. Like I'm tired of living in unprecedented times,
Precedent.
right?
Give me some precedent.
Yeah, and so is your workforce, right? I mean,
Yes.
everybody who works for you is feeling the same way, and so it was interesting. One of my colleagues wrote a great piece this week where he looked back at how this is Brian Elliott, one of our executive in residence, who used to work at Slack and is like one of the foremost experts on remote work and hybrid work and how to make it work and also like the change management that
Yeah.
goes into managing that. And he's made some great parallels about how change management for remote organizations that were good at change management when it came to remote work and hybrid work are going to be better at it when it comes to AI transformation too, because you've already developed the muscles and the skills to really try to transform your organization for something else. And so leg up to those organizations. But he's writing about how much more quiet executives are right now than they were. I mentioned this earlier in our conversation. You saw all these executives come out and speak much more prominently about the issues of the day during the first Trump administration, and now amid all the, the pressures and the attacks and the ways that business is interacting with Washington, you're seeing so much more quiet and reservation about speaking out on these issues. And but what he focused on is a lot of executives kind of learn their lesson from those times and maybe don't want to engage in every single issue that comes out, and that's understandable because you might have gotten a little burned, but that like people still need to hear from you somehow, and that if you're not talking to them, if you're not offering support, then you're going to have a distracted workforce right now. You're going to have people who do not feel safe. And so a lot of his focus was not on let's jump in and talk about the latest issue of the day and get political in any way, but focus on what you know, focus on connection, finding ways to just ask people how they are, how they're doing, doubling down on the culture, the company's values that really matter right now, finding those anchors, the things that really count, make consistent check-ins. The other thing is like make their work a little easier and clearer when there's so much else going on out in the world. The more you can make clear priorities, set an agenda that makes people know exactly what they need to be doing. If you can cut down on the noise and the distraction internally, that will help with the noise and the distraction externally. So I do think this is something that everyone's really grappling with, and
Right.
it's huge
Yeah.
costs. I mean, well-being and stress and a lack of being able to focus has huge business impact and needs to be a focus.
I'm actually delivering a talk to the folks over to the women's group over at GE Vernova about this
Hmm.
very thing, about crisis communications and how to not make it more of a thing, how to determine and discern which is a thing and which isn't. But even if it isn't, to your point, you need to acknowledge
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Check in on people, I think. That's a big part of it. Because I mean, there are real costs. I
Uh,
mean,
uh,
yeah.
right. And I also think it ties into gaslighting in a weird way where a person all of a sudden thinks, I'm the only person who's thinking this. I must be crazy. And
Yeah,
then if
there's
you
an
go,
acknowledgement that happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, so really quickly, two more questions for you. I just think charter, what a fascinating and such an important time right now for your voice, your being your Jenna voice, but also charter's voice. So what kinds of responsibility do you see like charter having not just to reflect the workplace, but kind of a role to, I don't know, reshape or help it evolve?
Mhm. No, I mean, it's a great question because Charter does is a mission-driven organization. Our mission is to transform every workplace and catalyze a new era of dynamic organizations. Just a little bit about it. I've just joined a few months ago, but it was founded kind of during the peak of the pandemic by a former journalist from the Wall Street Journal and one of the co-founders of Quartz, Kevin Delaney, Jay Loff, who's been at amazing places like Wired in the Atlantic, and Aaron Grau, who also has history at the New York Times. So they really saw an opportunity to develop a product that focuses on the modern workplace and on what is actionable. What's the practical thing you can do? Taking legitimate, concrete ideas grounded in evidence and research, and share that with their readers in a way that is journalistic, but that is also speaking to the most forward-thinking, most progressive companies, the ones who are really trying to push for a better future of work. And so does that mean we're going to cover every single company out there? No, we're not. We can't. We can't with our resources.
Nor
But
should you.
or no, sure. Yeah, exactly. But what we really want to be is a almost like an idea partner for our readers, and how can they learn from some of the smartest both researchers and practitioners in in the space that they work in.
To me, too, I see charter as really helping orient people,
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
right? And I think it's because it's helped centering, and there's so to your point, there's so much blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking there, but if you just a smidge, and it just opens the aperture or shifts the aperture so you can really see what's out there. So I'm super excited and really grateful for everything that you all are beginning to really look at. And
Thank
the
you.
minds that you mentioned, utmost respect for each and every one,
Thank you.
and yourself included in that. Okay.
Thank you.
In closing, my friend, so
Yes.
with all that in mind, what gives you hope right now
Mm.
about the future of work? I'll say both for everybody, but also just for women who are looking for impact and also integrity.
I see a lot of choices being made by people to chart their own path, honestly. I saw some really interesting data out of LinkedIn, I think, of how much like founder is and one of the top job titles right now. And I think
Yeah.
it's people are like, I'm doing gonna figure out how to do this on my own. And does that give me hope for organizations? I do think that companies will have to reckon with that, but I think people are finding their own way to write their own rules. I also think we see in a younger workforce people who really are leading with their values and with the things that matter to them. And that gives me a lot of hope, if we can find the pipelines and the career paths for them in our current world, that they really are looking to lead with the things that matter to them, and that may be work-life balance, it may be, their values around the world and around climate, but they're really setting those as priorities, and I think that's something that everyone could listen to.
It makes me think of a story that way back when I was at Inc., we did a whole story called The Apple Tree, and it was about all the amazing companies that had gone on to be founded by people that used to work at Apple. But it
Mm,
also coincides with the comment that you made about job huggers,
mhm,
right? And people holding on to jobs so hard.
yeah.
So perhaps companies ought to take that philosophy of we are a teaching ground. And we're going to enjoy, do our best, pour our best in and out, be mutually advantageous and helpful and education oriented to these future leaders. And then when it's their time to go and seed, because we're prepping them and they're going to go off and create the next and continue in ecosystems that's more sustainable, then that's a really cool legacy that old school companies could play. Will they do it? And is that pie in the sky? Yes, absolutely. It's how I roll. But it would be sure nice. Maybe that next generation will be the ones that see it that way. Oh, Jenna, thank you so, so much. To be continued. And perhaps maybe we can do some sort of live journalism event
Oh,
in the years to come. I would love to do that. But best of everything to you and Charter, seriously. And I'm just so grateful for you and all
thank
that you're
you.
doing and
Thank
revealing.
you. I'm thrilled to have the conversation. I can't wait to follow, the rest of your podcast too.
All right. Thanks so much.
Great.
Until next time. Fabulous conversation with such a smart person who is really got her finger on the pulse of so many things. She and Charter are doing such great work. Here are three things that I walk away from that, aside from really scary numbers regarding women in the workplace. I don't want to get distracted by that. Here's some things like, as Charter says, what are actionable steps that you can take? 5 C's, culture, double down on it, pay attention to it. 2, check in. Seems really basic. People don't do it. It can even just be do a walk around, a floor pulse, a floor tempo with those with whom you work. C, clarity. Provide it in terms of what you're thinking, what the company is doing, and really what the values are and how you are, in fact, embodying them and modeling them. See, communication. And lastly, centering. There's so much when it appears that there are so many shoes dropping and everything seems kind of in a state of crisis. Some things are crisis, some things are other people's crisis, so it's not your crisis, but they all need to be acknowledged. So state when you see an elephant in the room, when you feel an elephant in the room, mention that, yeah, I hear that stomping, but here's why we're okay and here's why we're safe. And the last C, choice. You always have a choice. how you respond, how you react, how you participate or not in a situation that's going on. The things that are really, as a leader, to pay attention to. What are you doing with regard to childcare crisis? It's a huge thing. And also to her point, is retention really what we should be measuring in the workplace, especially when people can't even get into the job that they then want to go on to retain? And lastly, and I can say this because I am of a certain generation, this whole notion of job hugging. I know people need work, and I get that, and I really do. Are there ways that you, however, can parse out parts of your work so others can have a job at least and get their foot in the door? Think about it. And with that, I look forward to the next Women Advancing conversation. Until then.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Till next time.